Hello, my name is Janet Curran, and I am here to introduce you to the science and art of verbal behaviour analysis, or what we call VBA. In this video, I will explain what VBA is and use data from a research project in Denmark to demonstrate how we use it to understand the dynamics and effectiveness of your meetings and interactions, including how power and status are used, the level of psychological safety within a team, and how well people listen to each other and show interest in each other. Verbal behaviour analysis is a research technique originally developed by Neil Rackham and published in his book Behaviour Analysis and Training. It is a method of analysing a conversation by allocating everything that is said into a set of descriptive verbal behaviour categories. The job of the observer is to listen to the conversation, record the number of times each person uses a certain category of verbal behaviour, and then use this data to produce a verbal behavioural profile for each person that provides them with objective feedback. The focus of this technique is on purely verbal behaviour, i.e. what is said. Although tone of voice may influence how we categorise a verbal behaviour, we do not specifically analyse it, and we do not capture any non-verbal behaviour or body language. Let me introduce you to two of our major behaviour categories, seeking and giving. We define seeking as a question inviting somebody else to speak, which is followed by a pause that invites a response. We define giving as providing information, which can take many forms and is the most common behaviour we hear. For example, "How are you today?" is seeking. "I am fine, thank you," is giving. Just by using these two categories, we can identify the persuasive style being used and how much people are taking an interest in what others are saying through the balance of seeking to giving behaviour. We use another four major behaviour categories in addition to seeking and giving. Proposing behaviours put forward future-focused ideas, concepts, goals, aspirations, suggestions, or courses of action. Reinforcing behaviours provide a positive or negative evaluation of other people or their contributions. Listening behaviours clarify or connect to other people's contributions. And process behaviours control who is speaking and what is said. Let's now look at the four key aspects of meeting dynamics and performance that we measure through VBA. First, we look at how effectively does the meeting achieve its purpose or outcome and which verbal behaviours are linked to that. This will be meeting specific and measured through various indicators, some of which we can collect at the end of the meeting and some which have to be measured over the longer term. For example, we can collect feedback from attendees on whether they felt the meeting was efficiently run, achieved its purpose, and was a valuable use of their time. The second aspect we study is power and status dynamics in the team, where power is defined as the degree to which individuals have control over valued resources, and status is defined as to who is respected and admired the most by others. Both power and status impact on the underlying dynamics and therefore on the team's ability to collaborate effectively. Thirdly, we assess the degree to which people feel included and psychologically safe within the team, where psychological safety is defined by its originator, Amy Edmondson, as the shared belief within the team that it is safe to take interpersonal risks. According to the Google Aristotle research, this is the #1 factor in a high-performing team. Power and status will also impact on psychological safety. Our final aspect of meeting behaviour is how much people listen to each other. Most people, if asked, would say that listening is an essential behaviour, but the reality is that most of us don't do it very well most of the time. So we analyse people's listening profiles to give feedback on the degree to which they really listen to each other. We are now going to illustrate how we use VBA with some data from a research project we conducted in the construction industry in Denmark, where we were specifically asked to look at the inclusivity and treatment of women on building sites. The data comes from one construction site and 3 different meetings. The first meeting we called the contractors, which was between 2 project leaders, 1 female and 1 male, 2 men from the contractor client, and a male site electrician. The second meeting we called the project leaders, which was between the same 2 project leaders and the site foreman. The third meeting we call the electricians and is between the foreman and 6 of the site electricians, all of whom are male except for one female apprentice. So what can VBA tell us about the effectiveness of these meetings? When looking at effectiveness, we look at our proposing behaviours because they tell us the degree to which the meeting was outcome and action focused. We subdivide our proposing behaviours into 3 types. The first we call agenda because these are proposals about the agenda or process of the meeting. For example, let's start with the minutes of the last meeting is an agenda proposal. Agenda proposals tell us that a meeting is well structured and is following a clear agenda. Second is outcome, which is a proposal on what needs to be achieved. For example, we have to get that roof finished today, is stating an outcome. Meetings that are heavy on outcomes are likely to be more strategic and will be full of ideas but won't generate significant action plans, as these come from our third type of proposing, the action, which puts forward observable actions that will achieve the outcome. For example, we need to put up the ladders. The graph on this page tells us what percentage of the total behaviour we heard in each meeting was made up of agenda, outcome and action proposals. We can see that in each one there is a small amount of agenda setting. We would need to collect data from the participants to establish if they felt that the meetings were structured enough. Most of the proposals were outcomes, especially in the contractor meeting, which indicates that this was a more strategic meeting. The project leaders have more of a focus on actions than the contractors, but overall they are not producing the same level of proposals, which raises questions about their efficiency. And the electricians are hardly making any proposals, so theirs is clearly not an action-focused or planning meeting. We can also look at the percentage of each person's behaviour in the meeting that was in the form of these proposals. With the project leaders, the male project leader is the most proposal focused, especially on outcomes, which reflects a higher level of authority and power. The female project leader contributes a similar level of proposals to the site foreman, but she is more action focused. In the contractor meeting, the male project leader is even more proposal focused, and the electrician and one of the male contractors are also contributing significant levels of proposal. The second male contractor contributes fewer proposals but is more focused on agenda than anything else, so we can see that they are taking the role of structuring or chairing the meeting rather than contributing to the content. The female project leader is conspicuous by her much lower level of contribution to the proposals of the meeting, which raises questions about her ability to project her authority in this setting. As you can see, analysing proposing behaviours not only tells us about meeting effectiveness, but also about the power and status dynamics in the meeting. We can now look at this a bit further. We also get an understanding of the meeting power dynamics by looking at who is doing the talking, i.e. who has most of what we call the airtime. In our project leaders meeting, the airtime is reasonably balanced between the 3 people, with the female project leader having slightly more airtime than the others. Given that she was not as proposal focused as the male project leader, this raises the question as to how was she using the airtime. In the contractor meeting, it is the male contractor who is taking control of the content of the meeting, together with the 2 men from the site. The female project leader has much less of a role in this meeting, which again raises questions about her ability to assert her authority here. Let's now move on to look at what VBA can tell us about psychological safety. Here we turn to the reinforcing behaviours, which are an evaluation of somebody else, so always contain a value judgment, which can be positive or negative. Directed reinforcement means the behaviour is aimed specifically at another person in the meeting. Reinforcement can be about the person, something they have done, or an idea they have had. Negative reinforcement also includes humour, where the joke is aimed at somebody else, because any joke has the propensity to offend and create a defensive reaction in the receiver. We also record when people make positive or negative comments about the whole group or people who are not in the room. We call this non-directed reinforcement because it is not specifically directed at another person who is present. However, the level of non-directed positivity or negativity will impact on the climate and potentially on the overall level of psychological safety in the organisation, which is why we include it. It also indicates how much of a blame culture exists in the organisation. So let's look at the overall balance of positive to negative reinforcement in our 3 meetings. The directed behaviours show that the electricians are highly negative towards each other. The project leaders have more of a balance, but it is still tilted towards the negative. The contractor meeting is the only one that has a more positive climate. The electricians and project leaders also have a relatively high level of non-directed negative, so the overall picture for these 2 groups is of a highly negative and potentially toxic climate. What we are interested in is not just who uses reinforcing behaviours, but who receives them. We humans are social animals who rely on others to help reinforce our sense of self. Negative reinforcement received from others can diminish our ego or sense of self, whilst positive reinforcement can enhance it. So to assess psychological safety, we look at the balance between the amount of positive and negative reinforcement received by each individual. If a person receives more negative than positive, this is likely to make them feel less part of the group and less psychologically safe. The person who receives more positive than negative is likely to feel part of the group and more psychologically safe. This does not mean that we shouldn't give negative reinforcement. It is the balance here that is important. Looking at the number of negative and positive reinforcements received in our project leader meeting shows that all the balances are tilted to the negative, and the gap is bigger for the woman than for the men. When we look at who was giving reinforcement, we can see that the woman gave more positive than the men, which would explain why she therefore received fewer positive strokes. This level of negativity does raise questions about the level of psychological safety in this group, especially for the woman, and what that means for their ability to really listen to one another and challenge in a safe and constructive way. In the contractor meeting, the balance is more positive. Both the male project leader and the electrician receive more positive reinforcement than negative. The contractors receive more negative than positive, but the female project leader is the one member of the site team who has a reinforcement balance tilted to the negative. So we need to understand what is happening here. You can see that in this meeting she is not giving any negative reinforcement herself, only positive, in contrast to her male project leader colleague who only offers negative. Does she therefore feel that she cannot challenge in the same way that her male colleague clearly feels able to challenge? This is where we can use VBA to have conversations with people about their behavioural profiles and how they can potentially change them. Having established the likely level of psychological safety in the room, let's now look at listening behaviour. Our 2 main listening behaviours are summarising, which is a concise repetition of what has already been said in the meeting, and testing understanding, which is a question to clarify your understanding of what someone else has already said. In this section, we also look at seeking behaviours, as the amount of questioning we hear in the meeting also tells us the degree to which people are taking an interest in each other. The seeking data in our 3 meetings shows that the electricians ask far more questions than in the other 2 groups, which suggests that they take more of an active interest in each other and are sharing knowledge. The level of questioning in the 2 management meetings does raise questions about their efficacy. The level of listening is even lower than the level of questioning, although here the management teams do better than the electricians. It is worth noting here that in Neil Rackham's original meeting research, the optimal level of listening behaviour required to achieve real clarity in a meeting was 10%. By clarity, we mean that everyone leaves with a shared understanding of what has been agreed. All these meetings fall well short of that target, which suggests that none of these groups are really listening to one another. This is the end of this introduction video to listeners' verbal behaviour analysis technique and what it can reveal in terms of meeting dynamics and behaviour. If you are interested in having some of your meetings observed so that you can get people to recognise and potentially change their behaviour, especially the unconscious patterns of which they are probably not aware, then please get in touch. And thank you for watching.